Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a positive 1m. 16 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a negative 8. So the value of m is 8. And again, if you want to check your work, just rewrite our problem. And wherever there's an m, I'm going to substitute in that negative 8. So because we're following the order of operation, I know that I have to multiply first. So I'm going to multiply. I'm going to keep this negative here for a second. So I'm going to multiply negative 8 times a positive 2. And that will give me a negative 16. Then I have negative 6 minus a negative 16. And I know a minus and a negative together will become a positive. So then that's a positive 16 and a negative 6. Think of my scoreboard. Positive 16, negative 6. Two numbers on both sides. I subtract. I would get a difference of 6. And I take the sign of the larger number. So I would have a positive 10. So both sides are equal. And I did my problem correct. They check out. So let's look at some of the problems that look a little harder, but are not. So the first thing I notice about this problem is I notice where my variable is. It's on the left side. So for now, I'm just going to look at the left side. I want to get my variable alone. I see that 2 is being added to a, and it's also being divided by 2. So the first operation that I see is division. So I'm going to have to multiply to get rid of this 2 at the bottom. And remember that 2 is actually 1/2. Everything at the top is being multiplied times 1. It's a fraction. And the multiplicative inverse tells me if I multiply a number times its reciprocal, I can get 1. So I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation, because I want to keep it balanced, times 2 over 1. Here, I would have my reciprocal would cancel out. So then on this side, I would just be left with a plus 2 is equal to negative 1 times a positive 2 will give me a negative 2. So that was the first step. So now we're ready to do the second step. A is still not alone. What's on the side with a? Positive 2. What's the opposite of a positive 2? A negative 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. I know that a positive and a negative, according to the inverse property, will be 0. So I'm left with a, bring it down, bring my equal sign down. And here, if I think about my scoreboard, I would have a negative 2 and a negative 2. They're on the same side, so I would add and keep the sign. So I would have a negative 4. So let's check our work and see if our answer is correct. Remember, when we check anywhere we see a, we're going to put negative 4 in its place. So I'm going to start with the numerator, which is what we always do first. Negative 2 plus a positive 2. Again, if I think about my scoreboard, I would have them on different sides. I would subtract. I would get 2 and take the sign of the larger number. So I would have negative 2 over 2 is equal to negative 1. And a negative 2 divided by a positive 2 would give me a negative 1. So my answer is correct. It will check out. Both sides are equal. And last but not least, I wanted to do one more like that just so you kind of get the hang of it. They look scary, but they are absolutely not. Again, split my equation. Find the side where my variable is. It's on the left. I want to isolate that n. I want to get it alone and solve for the value of it. So the first thing I notice is 6 is being subtracted from n and then being divided by 3. The easiest thing for me to get rid of first is the 3. And remember, that's just not a 3. It's actually 1/3. So we are going to multiply, because the inverse of division is multiplication, both sides by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 1/3 would be 3/1. So on my left side, these will cancel each other out. They will equal 1, actually. And I will be left with n minus 6 is equal to, and on this side I have a -4 and a +3. A positive and a negative will give me a -12. My n is still not quite alone. Now he's being bothered by -6. So I'm going to do the inverse of a -6, which is add a +6 to both sides. A negative and positive will cancel out. I will be left with n is equal to, and again, if you think about your scoreboard, I would have a -12 on this side, a +6. I would subtract them because they're numbers on both sides and take the side of the larger. I would end up with a -6 for my n value. So let's check our work. Wherever I see n, I'm going to put -6 in its place. So I would have -6 minus 6 over 3 equals -4. So again, remember to take the sign in front of that number. So I would end up with a -6 and a -6. If I add those, I would have a -12. -12 divided by 3 is equal to a -4. -12 divided by 3 would give me a -4. And both sides are equal. I hope that this was helpful. And remember, good luck, Bearcats!